Hello, my name's Violet. They said I was just flipping greasy burgers behind a gas station, that I didn't belong in boardrooms or branding meetings. But when the franchise permit crossed my desk, yes, my desk, they had no idea I held the pen they needed. They built their business on my recipes, my photos, my words, and left my name out of everything. My own father introduced me once as just the help. My sister, she called my work a hobby. But what happens when the girl they erased turns out to own the last signature they can't forge? Would you still call it just a food truck? Or a quiet rebellion? Why do families only see you after you've become a threat? The dinner invitation came in like a group text nobody really asked for. It buzzed onto my screen while I was wiping down the grill, my hands still greasy from the lunchtime rush. I stood there in the back of my truck, half covered in the scent of seared onions and peppered aioli, reading it 3 times, like maybe the words would change. Family legacy dinner, this Friday, everyone expected. Business casual. I laughed. Legacy. As if I had ever been part of that word in this family. I thought about ignoring it. I had every reason. But something in me, maybe spite, maybe exhaustion, made me tap. Yes. Business casual? Fine. I had a clean shirt and jeans without holes. That'd have to do. The night of the dinner, I parked 2 blocks away from the old house. Didn't want my truck in their driveway. Didn't want them talking. The house still looked the same. Grand. Pristine. Like it had never known the messiness of real life. The windows glowed soft gold. Laughter leaked out before I even rang the bell. Isolde opened the door with her usual polished warmth. Her eyes flicked to my clothes, the faint oil on my sleeve. She kissed my cheek, not quite missing me, but not quite landing either. "You still doing that little food thing?" she asked. I smiled the way I've learned to, polite, unfazed. "Still at it." Inside, the house smelled like fig candles and catered roast duck. Callista floated in like she was hosting a gala, not a family meal. Her makeup immaculate, her dress clearly handpicked for the lighting in the room. She saw me, didn't say a word. Alton was in the living room, entertaining some business guests. When he saw me, he gave a nod, then turned to introduce the room. "These are my children," he said, gesturing to Callista and a man I didn't recognize. "Callista, of course, and this is Ethan, our marketing lead. Feels like family at this point." I didn't flinch. Just made my way to the side table, poured myself a glass of whatever white wine was already open. Let them forget I was there. They were good at that. Dinner began with clinking glasses and shallow compliments. The roast was overseasoned, the conversation undercooked. I kept my head down, listened, tried not to count how many times I heard the word expansion. Then came the toast. Alton stood, cleared his throat. "To growth, to legacy, and to the future of Davidson franchising, under the capable hands of our Callista." Applause. Laughter. Someone across the table turned to me and asked, "Are you with the caterers?" Callista laughed too loud. "She runs a food truck," she said, waving a hand like it was a fun fact. "Greasy burgers by the gas station. Actually, pretty decent, if you like that sort of thing." They all chuckled. Not cruel, just dismissive. The kind that makes you question if you even exist. I didn't correct them. I didn't tell them about the write-up I got last month in the local paper, or the city permit meeting I had led just days ago. I didn't bring up the long hours, the line that wrapped around the block on Saturdays. I just sipped my wine, tasting nothing. Eventually, someone passed around dessert, some panna cotta nonsense. I didn't touch mine. Alton raised his glass again. "Big news. We're expanding to 4 states next quarter. Callista's leading the charge. It's ambitious, but she's ready. She has the look, the business sense, the connections." Callista smiled like she was born with a spotlight on her face. I just watched them quietly. "Sounds ambitious," I said. Calm, measured, not even sarcastic. I stood up, folded my napkin, set it beside my untouched spoon. "Thanks for dinner." And I walked out. No drama, no storming. Just left the silver spoon sitting there, polished, pretty, completely unused. I didn't slam the door, but I wanted to. Instead, I walked quietly down the stone steps, letting the cool night air settle around my shoulders like an old coat I hadn't worn in years. The chill didn't bother me. The silence did, the kind that settles behind your ribs after everyone has laughed. Just not with you. I didn't go straight home. I drove around for a while, through streets I knew too well, past my old middle school, the church where Callista's first wedding had been staged like a Broadway production, the now-closed deli that once let me run a pop-up table out back when no one else would. My food truck sat tucked behind a closed gas station just off Lombard. I pulled in and parked beside it. There was no real reason to stop, but I unlocked the side panel and climbed inside anyway. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint scent of cumin and garlic from the night's special. This was my cathedral. I sat on the metal stool by the prep station and opened my phone. The screen lit up with old text, new ads, and one message I'd left unread for weeks. From Callista. Hey! Brunch next Saturday to celebrate the expansion announcement. Would be nice if you could help with setup. No title, no position, no, we'd love for you to be involved. Just help with setup. I tapped on the calendar entry. 1 month ago, that brunch. I showed up at 9 a.m. sharp, wearing the only dress I owned that still fit me after years of midnight fries and taste-testing new aioli blends. The venue was a rooftop downtown, all glass walls and succulents in tiny ceramic pots. A backdrop banner read, Davidson Legacy, Clean Flavor, Big Future. The event coordinator looked at me like I was late, handed me a clipboard and said, Napkins should be folded in thirds, not halves. No one said hello. No one asked if I needed water. And Callista? She floated through the crowd in heels taller than most people's patience. Hair curled, lipstick fresh, voice polished like she rehearsed every syllable. Our food aesthetic is high-end street, she said to a group of lifestyle bloggers. You know, without the grease. I nearly dropped my water bottle, but I didn't say anything. I folded napkins, arranged table numbers, and left before the first toast was made. That night, I deleted every photo I'd taken of the event, except one. A close-up shot of the menu. Burger sliders, signature sauce, same turmeric saffron blend I'd created years ago when I ran midnight test batches behind Eddie's Deli. Same garlic aioli swirl pattern I'd used on my open late banner back in 2018. At the time, I told myself it was just coincidence. The next morning, I knew better. I rolled over in bed and checked Instagram. The first post on my feed? Callista, of course. Callista cooks. Clean flavor, no compromise. The image was pristine. Angled lighting, a slate platter, tiny rosemary garnish. But it was mine. Every line, every curve of that burger had my name on it. She captioned it, a twist on my mom's original recipe, perfected for the modern palate. No mention of me, of the sister who spent 2 years experimenting with brioche buns and turmeric pickles, of the girl who stood outside in freezing rain, handing out samples when no one else showed up. I didn't comment, didn't text. I got out of bed, walked barefoot to my tiny kitchen, opened the drawer where I kept old permits and invoices, and found the original photo. I printed it. Then I slid it behind the framed napkin on my food truck's wall. The same napkin from the day I opened, still stained with the first ever saffron oil drip. You're not taking this from me, I said aloud. Not to Callista, not to the internet, but to the ghost of every moment I'd swallowed my pride in favor of peace. Later that afternoon, I got back into my truck to prep for the dinner rush. But first, I opened my work email. There it was. Subject line, New franchise permit submission, urgent. Sender, city permits, I clicked. Attached, an application from R Holdings LLC. Founder, Alton R. Director of Expansion, Callista M. Requested jurisdiction, North Portland, Regional Territory. Permit Authority, Violet R. Regional coordinator. My breath caught, but not from shock, just the weight of something shifting into place. So, I whispered, it begins. The silence in the food truck was louder than the sizzle of any grill. I sat there, elbows on the small metal counter, phone still glowing. The words on the screen hadn't changed. They never do. But I read them again anyway. Franchise permit. R Holdings. My father's signature. Callista's title. And there, at the bottom of the chain, my name, not as family, not even as a courtesy, just a line in a bureaucratic process. Violet R., Regional Permit Coordinator. They hadn't just gone behind my back. They'd walked right past me, waving my title like a flag, assuming I'd never raise it. I leaned back, let the phone drop on the prep table. The air inside the truck was still tinged with the smell of yesterday's garlic, toasted bread, and the faint undertone of something I couldn't quite place. Betrayal, maybe. I opened the attached brochure. Polished, full color, carefully curated photos. Callista, standing in front of a mock-up storefront with her arms crossed, and that calculated, I'm both boss and brand smile. Quotes in bold positioned like scripture. Salt from the sea, fire from the heart. That line, that was mine. I wrote it on a scrap of cardboard the night I opened the truck, in black Sharpie, next to my price list. I remember because I spilled saffron oil right after. The stain never came out. I scrolled. Nowhere in the brochure did my name appear. Not even in the acknowledgments. They thanked the photographer, the property manager, and some PR intern named Morgan, but not the one who built the flavor, the name, the damn idea. I whispered to the screen, "You didn't just take the burger. You took my voice." Outside, the wind picked up. A loose napkin fluttered off the nearby bin and stuck to the wheel well. I didn't move. Instead, I reached for the drawer beneath the espresso machine and pulled out my old binder. The one with the original menus, recipe notes, margins scribbled with late-night taste tests, and notes like too lemony or swap red onion for grilled shallots. Then I grabbed the brochure, printed it. Red pen in hand, I circled every phrase lifted from my truck. Salt from the sea. Circle. Modern palate with nostalgic roots. Circle. The arrangement of pickles, the char marks on the slider patties, photographed at an angle I used in my social posts a year ago. I knew it because it was my countertop. I didn't need this to prove anything to the city, but I needed it for me. The next morning, I opened the truck an hour late. Nobody seemed to mind. Regulars knew I was consistent enough to be forgiven when I wasn't. I tacked the brochure, now marked up in red, to the inside of the fridge door with thumbtacks I bought at Dollar Tree last winter. It didn't make me feel better, but it kept me from forgetting. Later that afternoon, I called Dorian. He was my one lifeline in the office who never treated me like a token. We'd been work friends, nothing more, but he never questioned how I got there. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Hey," he replied. "What's up?" "I need a favor." I could hear the clicking of his mouse. "What kind?" "Pull the franchise permit queue. Look for R Holdings LLC. A beat of silence. "That's your dad's umbrella company, right?" "Yeah," I said. "I know." More silence. "Violet," he said slowly. "You sure you want me to flag this?" "No. Just keep me updated. Let me know when it hits my desk." He exhaled softly. "Okay. Will do." I hung up and stared at the metal wall in front of me. My reflection was faint, distorted by grease streaks and the fading sunlight outside. I looked tired, but not weak. That night, after the dinner crowd had come and gone, I swept the floor of the truck and wiped down the counters like always. Routine. That's what saves you when your family tries to write you out of their story. Routine, and the knowledge that some pages can't be rewritten once the ink dries. I turned off the main light and stepped down from the truck. The air was colder than expected. I zipped up my jacket, locked the side door, and tucked the key into my front pocket. In the distance, a car drove by blasting pop music, Callista's favorite station. I could almost hear her voice, polished and practiced. We believe in flavor that respects the past while reimagining the future. They'd taken everything, my food, my phrasing, my fire, but they hadn't taken the permit. Not yet. I looked up at the night sky, dark and wide, and whispered into the stillness. Not this time. The paper didn't budge beneath the mustard bottle. It stayed right where I pinned it, under my name, my handwriting, my power. I stepped down from the truck and locked the side panel. The evening had settled into that quiet Portland kind of dark, hushed, damp, and edged with wood smoke from someone's fire pit. I crossed the parking lot, walked past the flickering open sign on the corner bodega, and turned the key to my apartment. Still in my uniform, still smelling faintly of roasted garlic and burnt sesame, I sat down at the small table by the window and opened my laptop. The permit was still in the queue, flagged for manual review, waiting for one thing, me. I stared at the screen, at the spot where my father's name sat neatly typed, Alton R., founder, and just beneath it, in bold, Callista M., Director of Expansion. That title used to be offered to me, back when I was naive enough to think that family didn't come with asterisks. I clicked open the digital brochure again. Same smiles, same polished copy. This time, my eyes paused on the image of Callista and another woman, her old college roommate, if I remembered right, posed like co-owners in a spotlight. I couldn't help it. I laughed, a short, bitter sound that tasted like regret. They had their image. I had the permit. The next morning, I didn't open the truck. I hung a sign. Closed for equipment check. It was a lie, sure, but a harmless one. I needed the time. Walking through downtown, I passed a coffee shop that had one of the new franchise posters in the window. There was Callista again, arms folded, hair curled to perfection, standing in front of a gleaming kitchen backdrop. The tagline read, "Where innovation meets family tradition." I paused, looked again. No mention of me, not even a shadow in the background. Just them. Always just them. And yet, who designed the first garlic aioli swirl? Who stayed up till 3 a.m., balancing mustard acidity and brown sugar for the short rib slider? Me. I kept walking. By the time I got to the permitting office, my mind was clear. I walked past the front desk, nodded at Dorian on his way out of the staff kitchen, and slid into my desk chair. My badge clipped neatly at my hip. Not for show, for function. I opened the permit file, entered my login, and clicked Review. Every line was in place, except one. I scrolled to the bottom. Final approval required by regional coordinator. My cursor hovered over it. Instead of clicking, I opened the comments box and typed, "Pending in-depth review. Source branding questions raised." I didn't press enter. Not yet. I leaned back in my chair and thought of the last time I asked my father if I could shadow a store launch. It was during dinner at home, back when I still came to Sunday meals, still wore heels to fit in, still tried. He hadn't looked up from his wine glass. "You're better off staying in your lane, honey. Keep flipping burgers." That was the moment. Not a slap, not a scream. Just that. It's funny how silence can echo louder than shouting. The sun had started to drop behind the downtown skyline when I got the text. From Isolde. No greeting, just, "I'm near the truck. Wanted to say hi." I could have ignored it. But something in me, the part that still needed a witness, replied, "I'm here." 20 minutes later, she showed up, stepping lightly in those ballet flats she wore when she wanted to seem casual. I opened the truck for her, turned on the warmer, reheated a patty with extra care. She didn't speak much, just sat on the plastic stool inside the truck and ate, slow and neat, like she was judging a food competition she didn't want to be at. Then she said it. "It's amazing, Violet. I honestly didn't think you'd make it this far, despite your choices." I stood there, frozen. No thank you, no apology, just that. Dressed up like a compliment. "Appreciate it," I said, sliding the ketchup bottle a little farther away from her reach. She looked at me, Not cruel, just detached. You could have had it easier, but you made things complicated. I didn't argue. No point. After she left, I cleaned the grill, wiped the stool, and sat down. I opened my laptop again, typed, Flag R, Holdings Permit, Do Not Autoroute, Potential Public Hearing Required. Still, I didn't send it. Instead, I added one final sticky note and pressed it to the physical printout back on my truck. Review by Violet R., Senior Permit Coordinator. Then I sat back. The window was cracked open, and a gust of wind lifted the corner of the permit. I pinned it down with the mustard bottle. The blinds clicked shut with finality. I didn't look again. I didn't need to. I already knew who was pacing down in that lot and what she'd be saying into her phone. I could picture her face. Callista's jaw clenched just so, her voice rising and falling as she spun her version of the story to whoever she thought could fix it. I stood for a moment in the stillness of my office, letting that image settle. Then I turned and locked the door. I wasn't in the mood for visitors. Not tonight. I hadn't touched lunch, and my stomach reminded me in a low, hollow ache. I grabbed the container I'd brought from home, sat at my desk, and opened it without much ceremony. Cold sesame noodles, still good. I took a bite, then reached into the folder beside me. Inside was the brochure again, glossy and smug as ever, and the matching high-res image I'd pulled from their website. I laid it beside a printed receipt from my point-of-sale system, time-stamped and clear. The angle, the sauce placement, even the position of the sesame seeds on the bun. They weren't just similar. They were identical. I remembered the day we took that photo. I had just trained a new cashier, and my shift lead, Brianna, snapped a few quick shots for our weekly post. She uploaded it to our Dropbox with the note, Slider shot, keeper. Now that same image, cropped, recolored, and conveniently unattributed, was headlining their online menu. And the kicker? It had been paid for, by Callista, through R Holdings. A short laugh escaped my throat. So you paid to steal, even better. I pulled the paper closer, grabbed a red pen, and circled the receipt ID. I highlighted the client name and the payment method, linked to a corporate card issued to R Holdings. The brand assistant who had once worked my register now listed herself as a creative director under Callista's campaign. The math was simple. The ethics? Not so much. By noon, I reopened the truck for a soft lunch. No banners, no announcements, just the regulars. I served 6 orders, 3 of them from customers who didn't say much, but handed me tips that made me pause. There's a way people say, thank you, without saying it, like they know you're in the middle of something and want to stand quietly beside you. Between the second and third orders, I unscrewed the chalkboard menu I'd used since the day I opened. It had scratches around the corners and ghost markings from past specials. I set it aside and replaced it with something new, a brushed steel plaque I'd ordered 6 months ago but never had the courage to hang. Not fancy, just fair. All flavor, no inheritance. The first person who saw it, a woman in her 70s who always asked for no pickles, read it out loud and smiled. About time, she said. You tell 'em. By mid-afternoon, someone had snapped a photo and posted it online. I didn't ask who. I didn't care. But by 4, my notifications were pinging. Foodie forums, Instagram resharing, someone tagging local journalists. Back at the office, I shut the truck again, changed into my work shirt, and pulled my badge from my locker. Dorian knocked once, stuck his head in the door. You've stirred the hive, he said. Callista's called twice, your dad once. Left nothing but silence. Good, I said. Let them sit in it. He handed me a copy of the flagged permit file. You really gonna send this through legal? I looked at the folder, then at the man who had quietly had my back since my first day. I'm not doing anything they wouldn't have done to me. I sat down, typed a short message. Permit review delayed pending brand originality concerns. Please refer to attached materials. I added attachments, brochure, receipt, side-by-side image comparison. Then I CC'd the city's legal compliance office and clicked send. The screen refreshed, and that was that. Later, as twilight crept into the edges of the sky, I looked out my office window. The light turned everything gold, even the blacktop where Callista still stood. Alone now, pacing less. She looked up. Saw me. We locked eyes for a second too long. I didn't wave. I didn't smirk. I just closed the blinds. The blinking red light on my phone kept going long after I stopped speaking. I didn't hit stop right away. I wanted them to feel it. The silence. The weight of what hadn't been said for years, now spoken out loud. Documented. I reached across the table, pressed the button, and the light went out. Alton was still seated across from me. His posture was ramrod straight, but the tips of his ears were flushed. He hadn't said a word since I'd spoken. Callista was pacing behind him, arms folded tight. Her jaw clenched hard enough, I thought she might chip a tooth. The heels she wore were too high for a government office, but she looked like she dressed in a rush. Hair a little out of place, makeup a shade too heavy. Even the perfectionist in her had cracked. I stood up, gathering the permit file and the folder of evidence I'd prepared. "If you'd like to resubmit," I said calmly, "with corrected attributions, we can reopen the review. Otherwise, the current application will remain flagged." "Violet, you're being unreasonable," Alton said finally, his voice clipped. "No," I replied, voice even. "I'm being consistent. You've built a franchise on a false origin story. I have receipts, literally." Callista made a sound, half scoff, half groan, and dropped into the chair beside her father. "You're overreacting." I looked at her. "Are you going live again to explain this part too?" That shut her up. I walked out of the room, folder in hand, and didn't look back. Back at home that evening, I kicked off my shoes, poured myself a glass of water, and sat on the edge of my bed. My phone was buzzing again. Dorian had texted twice. Updates on compliance, media inquiries, chatter online. I silenced it. What I wanted was quiet. But I didn't get it. Because by 7 p.m., Callista went live. I wasn't watching, but I heard about it fast enough. Her tone was controlled, overly rehearsed, but I knew the rhythm. She was in spin mode. She used phrases like miscommunication, shared inspiration, and collaborative evolution. She tried to paint herself as a creative who sometimes pulled from family history and admitted to unintentional overlap with my work. It didn't land. Because halfway through, she slipped. She mentioned a sauce, my sauce, that I had made the year before she ever stepped into a kitchen. And she said it was something she tweaked slightly from Violet's late-night menu experiments. That was it. The internet didn't miss it. By the next morning, screenshots of her statement were circulating. Comments flooded her page. Wait, she admitted it was Violet's? So why didn't Violet get credit? Permits still pending. Wonder why? I didn't comment, didn't need to. Let them say it for me. Still, the fallout brought up something old and raw. A wound I thought had scabbed over. 3 years ago, during a family reunion, I brought lemon bars. That's what I remembered most. Lemon bars and silence. We were out at the lake house, Callista and her fiancé of the month, a few cousins from the East Coast, and of course Alton and Isolde holding court under a string of warm lights like they were royalty, and we were guests in a kingdom built on inheritance. Alton stood with a glass of wine and introduced his 2 brilliant daughters. He nodded to Callista, and then to Rachel, my cousin, not me. I stood 3 feet away, holding a tray of lemon bars, waiting for someone to correct him. No one did. I left the tray on the table and drove home that night without saying goodbye. That memory had lived quietly in my chest for years. But now it flared. And it wasn't pain anymore. It was fuel. The next day, I was called to a closed-door meeting at City Hall. I knew who would be there before I arrived. The same 2 people who had spent years crafting a narrative that suited them. Alton in his gray blazer, Callista in another statement dress. They looked polished, but there was a different tension this time. Something less confident. They'd been rattled. Alton didn't waste time. He slammed the file on the table like he wanted to break it. "You're playing games with city process." "I'm following procedure," I said. He leaned forward. "This could cost us millions. Is that what you want? To sink the family?" I met his eyes. "This is the first time you've used my name in public," I said slowly. "Let's document it." And I hit record. His jaw tensed. Callista looked like she wanted to leave, but she stayed seated. "You thought I'd stay quiet forever," I said. "You built a brand on my silence. That permit? It'll come when the truth does." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. I just let the silence settle. This time, it was mine. The blinking red light on the voice memo app kept going. 2 days later, the complaint landed in my inbox. Filed formally with the city's ethics board, complete with letterhead, accusations, and an attached PDF signed by both Alton and Callista. Potential abuse of power due to familial conflict of interest. I sat at my desk at City Hall, mug of lukewarm coffee beside me, rereading the line until the text blurred. They tried to bury me, so I let them dig. I forwarded the complaint to our internal counsel and copied Lorcan. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Lorcan's name lit up the screen. "I saw it," he said before I could speak. "I already flagged it. They're grasping." His voice, as always, carried that calm steadiness, the tone of a man who didn't overreact and didn't let emotion cloud judgment. "I'm not worried," I said. "Good," he replied, "because you don't need to be. I pulled your previous case reviews, clean, by the book. We both know what they're trying to do." "They don't like losing," I said flatly. "No," he agreed, "especially to the person they underestimated." He paused, then added, "If you're okay with it, I'd like to co-chair the review committee. I think it sends a message." I stared at the blank wall behind my monitor, heart beating a little faster. "You'd do that?" I asked. "I believe in fairness, and in making sure people get credit for what they built." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Let's show them what real integrity looks like." The call ended, and I sat in the stillness for a few minutes, thinking. It didn't take long for the tide to shift. That same afternoon, Callista's live stream started making the rounds again, this time chopped into clips, captioned and edited with commentary. A Portland food blogger I followed reposted a side-by-side comparison, her quote versus my old food truck slogan, overlaid with "Sound familiar?" It got traction. Another local columnist wrote, "The real face behind Portland's best burger, not who you think." It wasn't just foodie blogs anymore. It was news. For the first time, people were asking questions that mattered. I didn't respond, didn't reach out. But I did something else. I opened the truck that night and worked a quiet dinner shift. No interviews, no public statements. At the end of the night, I posted one photo, just the grill. Flames dancing up around the cast iron, smoke curling into the dusk. Caption, "Still cooking, still mine." Nothing else. By morning, it had been shared over 4,000 times. At noon, a message hit my inbox. Notice of public franchise permit hearing. 48 hours. I stared at it. My fingers curled around the edge of my desk. Then I turned to look at the city badge clipped to my belt. Time to make them say my name, out loud this time. The courtroom smelled like varnished wood and fresh betrayal. I stepped inside, my heels echoing softly on the polished floor, each click purposeful, measured. I'd chosen my plain black suit for a reason, no frills, no performance, just me, standing where I belonged. Alton was already seated at the front, flanked by 2 legal aides. He wore the same navy jacket he always brought out for anything he considered important. His posture screamed control, but the tightness in his jaw gave him away. Callista sat beside him, flipping through a printout she clearly hadn't read before now. She looked like she was trying to appear composed, but the clench of her hand around her pen told another story. I took my seat across the aisle, placing my folder on the table before me. No makeup, no statement earrings, just facts. A senior officer from the city opened the session. We're here to review the contested franchise permit filed under R Holdings, LLC. Concerns have been raised regarding originality and brand authorship of materials submitted. The floor is now open for presentation. I stood. No need to clear my throat. My voice came out steady. My name is Violet R., and I'm the Senior Permit Coordinator assigned to this review. I've recused myself from final approval due to familial involvement, but I'm here to present verified evidence regarding the origin of the branding materials in question. Callista shifted in her seat. I opened the folder and slid 3 pages across to the clerk. This, I said, is a timeline of product development and content created over a span of 6 years, beginning with my food truck's original launch. The sauce profile, slogans, and imagery in the submitted franchise materials match mine exactly. I gestured to the screen where the city's IT team pulled up side-by-side comparisons. My food truck's Instagram post from 2 years ago, and Callista's current campaign banner. The match was unmistakable, even down to the misplaced comma in one caption. Next, I showed the receipt. Callista M. paid my former employee for access to proprietary photos and listed them as her own creations in the filing packet. This constitutes intentional misrepresentation. Alton's brow furrowed, but he didn't interrupt. I met the eyes of each panel member before continuing. I am not here to block expansion. I understand business growth. But this is about visibility. My work, my words, and my legacy were lifted without consent or credit. I'm asking for one thing: recognition. Silence. Then the panel chair leaned forward. What conditions do you propose? I slid over the document. 1. My name is to be credited as co-creator in all official branding and franchise materials. 2. A formal statement of acknowledgement to be issued to the press within 30 days. 3. Any future modifications to branding or recipes originating from my portfolio must be cleared through legal review with my written consent. A long pause. Whispered conversation among the panel. Then a vote. Unanimous. Motion carried. The chair nodded to me. Thank you, Ms. R. Conditions approved and attached to permit. Final revisions must be filed within 10 business days. I exhaled. Not relief. Clarity. Callista stood so abruptly, her chair scraped across the floor. She didn't look at me as she left. Alton lingered. He gathered his papers slowly, then turned toward me. It didn't have to be this way, he said. I looked up, steady. But it always was. 6 weeks later, I grilled onions in the rain while a stranger told me I was their hero. She had a lavender umbrella, one glove missing, and her hoodie was soaked through the sleeves. Still, she waited patiently at the side window of the truck, watching the steam rise off the griddle like it meant something. When I handed her the burger, extra pickles, no cheese, she smiled with a kind of softness I hadn't seen in months. Hi Jay, I saw your name in that article, she said. You didn't let them take you. I didn't have anything poetic to say. I just nodded. She paid, left a folded 5 in the tip jar, and disappeared down the sidewalk, umbrella wobbling in the wind. I wiped down the counter, flipping the next patty with the same motion I'd done thousands of times. Some things change, some don't. And some, you hold on to like they're the only thing you ever owned in full. It wasn't about headlines or even permits anymore. It was about not vanishing. I'd spent a long time thinking being seen meant a room full of people clapping or a signature on a product line. Turns out, it looks more like the back end of a parking lot in a beat-up food truck with just enough power to run 2 burners and a fan. I leaned on the counter and looked out toward the trees that framed the edge of the lot. The rain had started to let up, just misting now. The same gray sky, the same warped sidewalk. But I felt different inside. Not lighter, not yet, but clearer. I thought about the dinner table that started it all. The toast, the silver spoon left untouched, the way they all laughed without me. I thought about the brochure, the copied lines, The stolen photos, the permit, the hearing, and the look on Alton's face when the city approved my conditions. He hasn't called. Callista? Silent too. But Isolde mailed a postcard. Postcard, not a letter. It had a photo of a vineyard on the front, the kind she always collected when she traveled with her friends from her wine club. All it said was, "You made your point. I hope you're happy." Not cruel, but not kind either, just like her. And that's fine. I stopped expecting anything else from them a long time ago. Lorcan drops by the truck sometimes, never mentions the permit hearing, just places his order, leaves a little extra in the jar, and nods like a man who knows how to keep peace without words. Dorian still sends me emails, city things, schedule updates, sometimes memes. He never talks about the day he sent me the first warning, the message that set everything in motion, but I went back and read it again last week. Just thought you'd want to know. Permit request filed. Good luck. I almost replied. Typed up a whole message. Thanks for seeing me when they didn't. But I never hit send. Instead, I saved it in drafts and smiled to myself. This morning, before the rain started, I opened early for the community event down the block. Kids were painting pumpkins. A jazz trio set up near the coffee cart. People strolled by with dogs and strollers, and a few of them stopped when they saw the new vinyl decal on the side of the truck. Big letters, clean design, still cooking, still mine. I flipped the last patty of the day, wiped the grease off my hands, and shut down the griddle. The grill hissed in protest. I liked that sound. It meant I was done on my terms. I wiped the last bit of oil from the counter, shut the hatch, and stepped back onto the pavement. The sky had cleared just enough to let a sliver of blue peek through. I glanced back at the truck one more time, at the lettering, at the life I built from scrap metal, onions, and grit. Still cooking, still mine, still Violet. Sometimes the loudest voice in the room isn't the one that shouts, it's the one that signs the final document. This story isn't just about business or betrayal. It's about reclaiming your name when others tried to erase it. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to believe in you the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories where quiet strength rewrites the ending, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your story might be next,